Who the Wild Things Are with Ryan McGuire.
You gotta listen to your body.
Oh my God, maybe, I could get out there, I could do this.
Let's take a ride, find your wild side, real stories, see with your own eyes.
It's so beautiful.
I'm gonna have the best time out here.
I was in tears. I was just like, that's the best, man.
Welcome back to Who the Wild Things Are. My name is Ryan McGuire, and I'm here to bring you conversations with the most wild folks on the planet. If you're enjoying the podcast, please leave us a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice. And if you enjoyed the episode, share it with a friend. Appreciate you guys. Let's get it going. But first, I want to talk to you about the Last Mountain Man Standing Race. What's going on, guys? This is Ryan McGuire, and I'm halfway up our first climb that athletes are going to be doing for the Last Mountain Man Standing. I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about the details on the race so you know what to expect. Every lap is going to be 4.1 miles. You're going to have 60 minutes to complete that lap. On that lap, you're going to be experiencing some technical terrain, some free-flowing terrain, and also mountain man-style obstacles. We're going to have a go ruck, tombstone carry. We're going to have log carries, things like that. Once you make it back inside the 60 minutes, you get ready to start your next lap. If you don't make it inside of 60 minutes, you're out. So the first 6 laps, it's complete in 60 minutes. If you make it to the 7th lap, it's going to be a race on the same course to determine the last mountain man or woman standing. And that person is going to walk away with $500 cash for men, $500 cash for women. So if you think you have what it takes to be the last mountain man standing, or if you just want to do a single lap, which we call a foxtrot, come out on June 21st. We'll see you guys there. But it's, $10 instead of Jesse's, which is
like 80 or whatever.
Yeah, $100.
Yeah.
And so I do that was actually last year's. My new one's in our bedroom. Because I love the 365-day idea.
It's so nice to see the whole year all at once.
Yeah.
And you can thoughtfully plan things out so you're not cramming stuff into
Yeah, and it also it makes you not do too much.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Which you need.
yeah, exactly. I need
do
that.
too many races back to back and absolutely destroy yourself.
Especially during the summer when I'm guiding.
Yeah.
Because it'll be I was getting to the point where I was like, okay, I'm guiding this weekend, I'm racing the next week, and then I have another guiding trip, and then I have 2 more races, and it's
that's crazy.
It kind of just makes sure that you get maybe the 3rd weekend you're chilling.
Yeah.
You're just hanging out. So
that's good.
365-day calendars are good.
Nice.
Okay, let's do this. Cait Crowell, episode 2.
Round 2.
Yeah, episode 1.
Watch out.
Is a lot more about Cait and all of your background. So if folks haven't checked that out, definitely listen to number 1 right now and then come back to this episode. But appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me back.
We've been trying to set this up for a while, so I'm glad made it happen.
I know. There's been a lot going on with business and family things this year, but we made it happen. We're here. And I wanted to start off with something that made me laugh out loud on social media, which usually doesn't, which was I follow your husband, Stuart, one of my friends. Yes. Yep.
I like his Instagram, and I follow it. And he was talking about this device that he had gotten and how excited he was.
Oh, yeah.
And it was actually...
I know what you're talking about now. I was like, what are you about to say?
It was leading up to it because I don't think he could foresee what was going to happen. But he basically had said, I finally purchased this device that allows me to, hear whatever I want to in my sleeping mask at night.
Yeah.
And he was so stoked about it. And he was sharing these stories. And then...
what an idiot. I'm do you know who you're married to? You can't have that.
It's the next post on his story was within an hour of him getting the package. You're like, absolutely not. You are not sleeping with this on your head.
Yeah. No. I mean, what a terrible idea. EMF City. Stu's so funny, though, because he listens to audiobooks before he goes to bed. He did as a kid. He listened to, Harry Potter and, all of that stuff. Just all long books, Lord of the Rings, all of those things. He's still super into those movies and books and everything. I think he's actually going through the entire series of The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings right now in audiobook for the billionth time because it just puts him to sleep. Subconsciously, He still has that connection of audiobooks to sleep. But he always wears his Bose wireless headphones that he usually wears when we're traveling and stuff, which I'm still I don't like you wearing those in bed, falling asleep with them. He usually only has them on for like 10 minutes. So he was like, I've got this great idea. And then got, an eye mask that has like headphone speakers attached to them. I'm like, you're not, like, it's enough that you have this for like 10, 15, 20 minutes while you're falling asleep every night, but you want to sleep with this thing attached to your head. Like, you're nuts.
Yeah.
So, yeah, poor guy.
I'm still like, I'm still conflicted as to whether or not I'm scared of Bluetooth headphones. I feel like
same. I will say same. I mean, I like threw down the laws too because I was like, I don't know what I think about this, but I feel like if there's a way to avoid it, I'll avoid it. And then I don't know. There is some very crazy research and stats though. Like I have this on my phone. What is it called? Bodywell, I think that's what it's called. I can't see it through the cover that I have. But we have them on like our phones.
Oh yeah, I have those too, the little EMF protections.
Yeah.
Now I feel like those are horseshit.
They might be.
Yeah.
I think that it's more about like
I still will use it.
Right.
But it feels like
well, you kind of need a place for the frequencies to go. That's my understanding. Like in this room right now with all the tech, like all of the frequencies are bouncing off of the walls and like interfering with us, and the best way to mitigate that is like open up a window, give it a place to go.
Yeah.
Or if like you're in the car and you're on Bluetooth, crack the window a little bit. Like there's simple ways to mitigate that, or like unplug the Wi-Fi at night. Like I think there's simple things to do that are not so invasive that you can still live your life but be mindful.
Yeah.
That like we do some of that stuff, but I don't know. We're in the modern world. You gotta like.
Yeah, it's
you gotta
totally
find balance with
unavoidable.
100%.
And so far, there's no like conclusive data that says it's bad for you 100%. Like I was looking into the research about 5G, especially because a lot of people talk about 5G.
Yeah.
And while there is some evidence, like some studies, none of it has been like repeatable and super concrete.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, maybe it's bad, maybe it's not.
It's
but
hard
like
to tell.
either way, I think you want to avoid anything that is long-term chronic use, whether
I
it's
think it's
EMF or alcohol or anything in your life. I think like generally the principle is like try to limit everything.
Right. Well, and I think a lot of it too is like reset that with the Schumann resonance, right? Like get outside, get barefoot, get locked back into the frequency of the earth if you're going to be spending all of this time. Because there's definitely something to be said, about blue light. And I think it's the entire experience of tech. But also like, I don't know, we have some clients that are extremely sensitive to different environmental factors, and EMFs are one of them. Like if you have really bad mold illness, like think about, just kind of paint a picture here. Like the first thing to grow after Chernobyl was fungus. So like they're pretty resistant, and fungus will actually grow at a higher frequency in certain electromagnetic fields and with like 5G and Wi-Fi and things like that. So we have clients that will have like crazy mycotoxin exposure in their body and then be really sensitive to computers. Like they can't sit on the computer without blue blockers. They can only be on the computer outside because they'll get headaches, like just super sensitive. So I think it always depends on your toxic burden and like what you can tolerate. Some people can live in a city surrounded by a bunch of 5G towers and not think anything of it. Some people are like, I have headaches now. Like I think what's hard with these frequencies is they're kind of hard to track. It's why the studies are a little inconclusive, is like there's some cases where it's like there's a clear line where this started, or even like phone radiation and like people that have talked on their phone on the left side their entire life and they get a brain tumor and it's right where the phone was. So there's cases like that, but it's one of those things that's like it's so hard to track because the bio-individual piece is so variable.
Many things at play.
Yeah.
Interesting thing about Chernobyl. So it
boy.
probably makes sense.
Of course you know something about this.
Well, I'm just saying it probably makes sense in terms of like kingdom Mammalia, but like obviously humans would struggle in that type of radiation. Any mammals.
Yeah.
You're saying like simple organisms like fungi did well. I'm pretty sure those rivers have huge catfish.
Really?
Which I think would make sense in terms of like aquatic life.
I don't know anything about catfish.
Like 200-pound giant monster cats in those rivers
Weird.
still. Yeah, and you would think like there'd be no fish at all.
Definitely don't want to eat those fish.
No. Well, if you want superpowers.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Or like super death.
Yeah, or super death. That's a fine line, right?
100%.
But yeah, all that to say, I just loved that Stu story because I thought it was like just the most stereotypical story between you guys.
Yeah, it's like all those memes. There's like this, I don't even know the name of the handle, but 1,000 people being very dramatic. 1,000 people. But a bunch of people have sent me memes of this guy that's like something about like a holistic wife, and it's just like ripping on things. But he's super well educated. I'm like, this dude has to be married to a practitioner because the thing he's saying is
Is it the really very crunchy girl?
Maybe.
She like
It's
always...
like a dude with a wig with like, he's got like big front teeth. I think it's someone's husband. It's a dude. I mean,
Gotcha.
it's like a parody account of like just ripping on like being married to a holistic person.
Gotcha, because there
it's
is one called
hilarious.
Really Very Crunchy, and I think...
Oh, is it that chick that's like super? Yes, I think I know exactly who you're talking about. People
Yeah,
have sent
and
me that
she
one,
like
too.
spoofs it, but she also is like a practitioner and believes all of these things.
She's like dead serious, but being sarcastic at the same time.
Yeah, it's like an ironic thing about like her making like chicken bone broth from the neighbors and like how
Yeah.
you need to like bathe in it, you know, or something like that.
Yeah.
It's just like, I don't know, funny
my
examples
God.
like that.
Sounds like something you would do.
Yeah, I'm down. I feel like since last time, one big change, like shift in the political world is
Oh my
the
God,
like
everything. Jeez.
yeah, everything,
A
but
lot has
also
changed.
the Maha Make America
Yeah.
Healthy Again. How much are you how much change are you seeing as like a holistic practitioner, given that it seems like it's more of a priority now from the government?
I think it's, you know, at this point, it's a lot of awareness, I think. But what's really hard about, I don't know, this is just my personal opinion. What's challenging about it is like all of these things are going to take time from a policy level. They're so, I mean, like this is what I studied in college was like global public health, nutrition. That's what my degrees are in. And then having been in the field from a holistic standpoint for a decade now, it's like, you know, you just start to see patterns. You see these things that need to change. And from a political policy level standpoint, which RFK is trying to change, like it's a monster to deal with. It's super politicized. It always has been. I feel like it's at a peak right now because RFK is a very controversial person.
Right.
He's very outspoken about his opinions on things like vaccines and food additives and food ingredients and things like that. I've followed his work for a very long time. He's been an advocate for this field for, you know, pretty much his entire career from an environmental standpoint, and then into health and into standing up for families and children that have been vaccine injured. And it's controversial information by nature. And I think it's just going to take some time. I would say for me personally, at least in the state of Colorado, what's going on right now, and Colorado is a very liberal state, is we are currently dealing with a bill that has been proposed and is starting to get through passing. It probably will pass. That essentially flips Colorado from a green state nutritionally into a yellow or a red state. So there's different nutrition laws based on whichever state you're in. And the American Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, which is like the RD program, the registered dietitian program, they have a monopoly essentially on the entire nutrition licensure across the entire U.S. They're also, you know, in bed with, so to speak, the USDA, FDA. They get a ton of money from Monsanto and
They're bureaucratic
Big
in
Pharma,
nature.
100%. And so I knew all of this when I got into the field. I had a really challenging decision to make when I came out of school and finished my undergrad and was like, do I become an RD and get my registered dietitian license, or do I, you know, get a certification and go a different route that's going to give me a more bolstered, contaminated education that is really going to teach me like the truth of how the body works, how it commonly dysfunctions, how it is supposed to optimally function, and what to do about it. I had a lot of professors that were RDs that I butted heads with constantly because they were just, it was crazy to me to have a science-based industry that was so anti-science in terms of like asking hard questions and being like, let's just see what the answer is here. I mean, for example, I had professors that were like, there's no difference between organic and conventional foods. Herbicides and pesticides don't impact human health. It's like, go on PubMed right now and search that and you will find that that's literally just not true.
Yeah.
This is BS that you've been given through your RD education because, of course, you know, this company, this licensing body doesn't want to impact their
Because they're funded by
their
Monsanto.
stakeholders. Exactly.
Yeah.
So you get this really corrupt system top down all across the board. And so we're kind of like making a loop here, but kind of getting back to your original question. It's such a hoss of a system, and it's so complex and it's so deeply dysfunctional that I think we really need someone like RFK to come in and just shake the absolute crap out of the entire thing and reset it. And I think it's obviously pissed a lot of people off. It's going to keep pissing a lot of people off. But as someone who's in the field, like, have I noticed anything different yet? Other than, like, I mean, what's one thing that's been really, I need to talk about that law and come back to that because that's actually really fascinating. But like Joe Rogan had an author of a book that's called Dissolving Illusions, which is like a hoss of a book that is, everyone should read this. It's fascinating information about the history of all of the major vaccines and how they came to be about. And the history of them is actually very similar to how the COVID vaccine kind of got pushed into use. And the graphs that they share, I mean, like, it's just, and we can dig into this more, but it's just fascinating. And like, if you told me 10 years ago, like, the largest podcast platform is going to host this medical doctor and author that's been ostracized by the entire medical community to share this super controversial information that people need to hear, I'd be like, no way, she's gonna get killed. Like, most people who like whistleblow this stuff end up dead at some point. So I think it's kind of like, that's what I'm starting to see is like the awareness, the information. People are feeling a little more confident to talk about this stuff. But then you also see, not to like create two separate sides, but it's just the truth, the left like losing their minds over like, how could you be anti-vax and how could you question these things and how could we be questioning the government? Of course, they have the best interest of our people in mind. And so I think it's like, we're just going to continue to see all of this. But yeah, in terms of the law, I'll touch on that without getting into the weeds on it. Essentially, there's green states, yellow states, red states. It depends upon which state you're in, the legislature that your state has passed, and it defines who can practice nutrition. So red states are the laws essentially set that you can only call yourself a nutritionist and practice nutrition and work with one-on-one clients and make specific recommendations for nutrition, supplement, lifestyle recommendations for their health if you are a registered dietitian, if you're an RD. Yellow state has some convoluted components. Green states are like, you can get a certification and be a nutritionist. You can have a master's in nutrition and be a nutritionist. It's a little bit more loose. So Colorado's been a green state for a very long time, but we are probably flipping into a yellow or red state currently. There's a bunch of lobbyist groups right now in the holistic space that are currently trying to add an amendment to adjust the verbiage to that law so that it's not as ambiguous, because right now, as the law states, it's essentially like, if you're not an RD, you cannot practice. And if we catch you practicing and you are not a licensed registered dietitian, we can slap a class 2 misdemeanor on you, which is a $750 fine all the way up to 4 months in jail. So it's like huge, insane repercussions for practicing nutrition outside of this licensure. So we're trying to create amendments that get really specific on, like, the term right now is medical nutritional therapy, which is like, we'll define that. Can you guys define that a little deeper? And they're like giving everyone this very bland blanket statement definition, which for a lot of us in the field that have had, businesses for a decade helping thousands of people, it's like, well, am I going to be illegally practicing if I keep practicing like this? They also mentioned, like, if you get licensed and you're an RD, but you're practicing in a way that we don't like, we'll strip your license and we can throw a class 2 misdemeanor on you. So there's like, you see this stuff in certain states. When I was in college, I forget if Virginia was a yellow or red state, but the woman that I had an internship with, she was like dealing with all of that. And we actually had a client come in who she was, the woman that I was working with was like, I think this person is from the state, and like scoping out my business to make sure that I'm functioning the right way. Because I've had colleagues in red states that have had police officers show up, people from the state show up and say, like, you need to turn over all of your documents in the next week, or like, you're going to jail, just because they're practicing nutrition outside of an RD. So it's kind of an insane field. So you asked, like, what have I noticed, like, just to kind of round this out, like, I think there's going to be pushback. To me, in Colorado being such a liberal state, it's hard for me to not think, like, is the American Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics targeting these more liberal states that are like anti-MAHA movement, trying to make them stricter to continue this monopolization of like this certain way of nutrition that must be practiced, because they know those laws are probably going to pass in those states? Am I like a conspiracy theorist? I don't know. It's just an interesting thing to think about, because Colorado has been untouched and like a hotbed for holistic health for an extremely long time. Like Boulder, like how holistic is Boulder, same with Denver. Like there's so many incredible practitioners. So part of me is like, you know, maybe there's this pendulum swing to combat it. Like, I feel like I'm seeing that. I hate to think that, but it's like, I wouldn't be surprised if that's part of the, you know, the ammo to throw back at this. And then also what I was mentioning before of just more information being shared. Those are the things I'm seeing right now so far. And of course, with that law, it's like unique to Colorado, and we live here, and that's like where I run my whole company. So I'm like, you know, trying to get on top of all those things. But that's what I'm seeing so far. It's kind of wild.
I think, well, one, I've recently tried to not use the words liberal or conservative or right or left.
Yeah.
Because maybe
it's so
it's because I
divisive.
didn't. Well, it's not even that. Divisive is okay to make a distinction between two things.
Yeah.
It is what it is it's lazy because I did associate with what people would have called liberalism, which is personal freedom, environmentalism, radical health choices. And now I like snap my fingers and I woke up and they're like, well, that's not. Yeah. That's what the other people are
That's
doing.
right.
Now. And
Ring conservatism.
So what I'm
now.
going to do from now on is I'm going to state what I'm talking about, which is like, I am in form of anything that takes a health choice out of my hands.
Yeah, taking health freedom
is
away.
evil.
100%.
If you say, I should be able to hire my mom to be my dietitian and advise me what to eat because I'm a sovereign human being. Why can't you pick who your doctor is? Why can't you pick who your coach is? Why can't you pick who your house cleaner is? Why can't you pick who?
Anything.
It's always going to be an insult and an assault on the individual.
Right.
If you are saying you're not allowed to pick that person because you can't pick your doctor, Cait, because you're not smart enough to tell which one's a good doctor.
Yeah.
We will give you our list.
Decide that for you.
We will give you our list. And you can pick from here.
Well, that's how you know it's corrupt. And it's like not that hard to think about that. And you and I were texting about this before we started, but I feel like there's just such a trauma bond to the systems that we have set of like, no one wants to believe that the things that I just said are true. No one wants to believe that there's like a monopolization on the nutrition field. Something as simple as like what you eat and drink and nutrient density and how the body functions and like just getting the truth on that information.
But that's like what we would have called
crazy.
Liberalism. You sound like a 90s liberal.
Right.
That like you're talking about taking down the system and how they're in bed, which is
crazy.
like what the conservatives were right? That was like
Totally
and
flipped.
now it's like flip I'm
totally
like
flipped.
So I almost like don't like using these words anymore because like
the definitions have changed.
we've just like
It's too
blue is
ambiguous
red
now.
and now red is blue.
It's all purple.
It's like
It's pretty crazy.
I'm like, did I take a nap and everything switched?
Pretty much.
And
COVID happened and then everybody woke up and was like, the game board has shifted.
Yeah, see
crazy.
that's a weird one for me too. It's like COVID seems like the 90s liberals would have been like, my body, my choice.
Yeah,
and the conservatives would have been like, do what you're told. Your parents knows what's best.
Yeah.
And somehow the politicization was flipped.
Yeah. Well, to me, I think a lot of that comes back to like liberalism modernly as we know it today, looped in with like the scientific community. Like how many people do you know? There was, I wish I remembered what Chamath said, but Stu and I, we listened to the All In podcast. It's fascinating. Have you ever listened to that?
Yeah.
Super interesting.
Yeah.
Like some of the most incredible entrepreneurs.
They had Naval Ravikant on there, and that's how I got turned on to it because he's my
Nice.
favorite modern philosopher. I don't know if you listen to
Yeah,
him.
yeah, I know Naval.
Naval's the bomb.
It's super, but this podcast is fascinating. Even listen, like obviously you're into podcasts if you're listening to podcasts, but like it's a fascinating thing to listen to. But it's all these billionaires essentially that have made a ton of money in tech, bought, sold companies, and they're just at a very high level talking about their opinions on things going on in the world, within tech industries, within politics, within, you know, anything and everything. And they all have differing political views. Mm-hmm. But one of them mentioned that there's this like challenge in the modern liberal mind of this like disconnect of like over-education and over-trust in the scientific community when so much science is skewed and paid for and manipulated, but there's a belief and trust in that, you know, in that whole world. And then also this disconnect of like actually living and being in the world, because so many of these people are lifelong scholars that they don't actually get like hands-on life experience in a way that like can change your worldview. So there's like this disconnect, and it's like this overeducated highly opinionated, highly immovable, trust me because I know, and because I've read the books and I've done this, and there's validity there. I haven't done all that shit. Like, I've been working with people, I see what works, but I think both are valuable. And
Sure.
I think that's like what we miss is like, how can we marry those two things to push things forward? And like everything that I said about RDs, I don't think that all RDs are total crap. I have a ton of friends that are RDs that are incredible, that have done exactly that and blended the two, where they've got the science and information, they have the critical thinking skills, they're working with people, seeing what's real and what isn't. And I think that's like more of what we need and where the special sauce is. But it is definitely like, we're in interesting disconnected times, I think, all across the board.
Alan Watts, I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Yeah.
He's a philosopher and would be associated with like a more hippie movement, Taoism and Zen Buddhism.
Yeah.
But brilliant guy, a little bit thick for some people, but he has a monologue on thinking, and basically like those which always have thoughts, their minds are clouded. Like, it's a very Zen Buddhist idea, but at the end of
just
that,
like living up here and not like fully embodied.
yes, and at the end of it, he says a very poignant sentence, which is, "We've mistaked science for reality."
Yeah, I've heard that in a
it's-
bunch of songs as like an overlay.
Yeah, it's like a very classic,
yeah.
very classic.
And his voice is exactly like that.
Yeah. And when you dig into that, you're like, oh shit, that's right, because science were independently verifying or demystifying this one variable.
Right.
And the real world, actually, reality is about feeling things and taking
there's
into
emotion.
and count all of your senses,
100%.
not just identifying, what you've seen in a study.
For sure. It has to be applied.
It has to be applied. On that, we've got a couple questions.
Oh yeah, you
From,
threw up a question box on IG.
Yeah, a couple listener questions.
Let's go.
Let's go. Let's get them going. The first one is related to the first episode we did. So if you haven't listened to that, go ahead and listen to it. And it says, you guys spent some time talking about knowing where your food came from and the benefits of shopping from local farmers. My follow-up to that is, I assume everyone at my local farmers market are better than anything at a grocery store, but are there levels within that? Are there things I should be looking for, questions I should be asking when looking for local produce and meat?
What a great question.
It's a good question.
Good question. And you can probably weigh in on this too, because you know so much about this. But I think, there's there's layers to this. I think like at the best, highest level, at least from a meat standpoint, is getting like small regenerative ranchers that are really restoring the land and not just like grass-fed, grass-finished, like that's great from a nutrient density standpoint. But for example, like we get all of our meat from Carter Country Meats. I'm not affiliated with them. We just love them. We've built a relationship with them. RC and his wife Ania are fourth generation
Great people.
ranchers. They're incredible.
I'm wearing their tallow right now.
Nice. The purely tallow.
It's nice.
It's so good.
It's good.
But yeah, they have such a love for the land. They're doing things totally different than people around them. And they have regenerated 40,000 acres of grasslands that they holistically manage with their animals. And what that means is they are rotating the cattle that they have in a way that nature normally would have cattle graze rotationally based on predatory behavior, based on wolves coming after them, based on other predators coming after them. And so
weather patterns.
Yeah, weather patterns, all of that. And it's following the natural cycle. And what that does for the animals, you have a healthier animal, more nutrient density because they're getting this variety of grasses and nutrients. The soil is healthier because the animals are, having bowel movements on the soil, hanging out there for a while. They're not killing all of the grass, but they're walking around, they're kicking up the soil, they're incorporating their manure into the soil, and then they're rotating them. So we're not like killing the entire area that the animals are in, turning it into like a desert, creating no root systems, creating no grasses, and therefore no water absorbability, and then no nutrients in the soil. Like you deplete soils in this, in a more conventional way of farming. And so this regenerative way of farming is not only creating really incredibly nutrient dense beef in the way that it is supposed to be created, or, bison, whatever animal we're talking about, whatever meat we're talking about, but it's also regenerating the soil. There's CO2 sequestered back into the soil. So it's actually an incredible climate, impact of pulling extra CO2 from the atmosphere back into the soil, because the plants, more roots, healthier systems, you know, all of this, you're pulling more CO2 back in. So it's this really beautiful, you know, God created way that animals are supposed to be interacting with the land in a synergistic manner that humans also get to benefit from. So I would say that would be the best, is like whether it's Carter Country Meats or it's another, you know, regenerative farm where you can get to know the person, build a relationship. That would be my recommendation. Some people are like, just give me the meat. I don't want to like be best friends with these people. But I think there's something really beautiful in understanding where your food comes from, especially animals, and closing that loop. Because there's a huge disrespect, I think, of like, where's your meat come from? It's in the plastic, you know, styrofoam container at the superstore, and you're disconnected from that. Not that there's anything wrong with like grass-fed meat at the supermarket. But I would say if you want like the best of the best at the farmer's market from a meat standpoint, regenerative is definitely going to be the best. Grass-fed, grass-finished is going to be, you know, a close second. And below that, I mean, if you've got some grass-fed then grain-finished, but it's local, you know, you're also helping the environment by not having these like massive deliveries from Mexico or flying meat over from Australia or wherever the hell we get. New Zealand. Like, we have so much meat in the US that comes from there.
New Zealand and Argentina.
Yeah, it's kind of nuts. So I think from a meat standpoint, like local first, whatever the quality, that's going to be awesome. And then if you want to ratchet that up to regenerative and you can afford it and it makes sense to do that, that's a great thing to do. You can also, and this is more money up front, but Carter Country Meats does this too, where you can buy like whole cow, half a cow, put it in your chest freezer, and it's actually throughout the year way cheaper than going to the grocery store and buying grass-fed meat. And it's healthier. Like, these guys have done third-party nutrient density testing, and their beef is 300% more nutrient dense than store-bought grass-fed beef from a phytonutrient standpoint, micronutrient standpoint, minerals. It's insane. And it's literally just because the animals are in their natural environment eating complex different types of grasses, and they're in the sun, and you can taste the difference.
And it's a matter of freshness too.
Yeah.
Right. Time and distance from food to table. My
100%.
Personal recommendation would be get as close to the food as possible. Get as close to the food as possible, and as close as you're comfortable with.
Yeah.
I think the best way to eat meat is to take the life of an animal and be there hands-on. I know that's not for everyone. I think the next step is to know the person that's doing that and the person that knew that animal. And I think the closer you get to that animal and that process, the more you'll have gratitude for the meat.
For sure.
The more that food will nourish your body, right? Because there will literally be, if you know this person, there will be less time and distance.
Yeah, there's
compared
a connection
to
there.
If you bought it at a store. That's not to say don't ever eat store-bought meat.
Right, we do.
Yeah.
Still buy steaks from like Tony's and local places.
Totally fine.
Yeah.
But in circumstances like this listener's asking, I think the best thing you can do is have the closest proximity possible to where that meat is coming from.
For sure. And same with fruits and vegetables too. I mean, Colorado, like, we just get the worst freaking produce. So some of it, I mean, not the worst. There's some really incredible farms like Kilt Farms, places in Boulder that really have an amazing vegetable and fruit farming going on. So I would definitely look to some local places there. Same type of mentality. I think the biggest thing with vegetables is like, you don't want herbicides, pesticides, glyphosate, all this crap. And there's natural ways to combat pests and things like that with all sorts of different modalities and, you know, ways to strengthen the nitrogen that's in the soil if you're farming, and getting some fruits and vegetables and things like that. But local is great. So I would just be mindful. I think, like Ryan said, with the closeness with meat, that's definitely number one. And then, all of the, like, what are they putting on these plants that you're eating? Plants usually have way more, issues involved with them than animals do. People like to think that it's the opposite because it's like a living creature. But plants are usually the thing that, like, cause more parasites. Like, how many E. coli breakouts have you seen from ground beef at the grocery store? It's always romaine lettuce because of the way that they grow it. It's like,
and the fact that there's all these warning labels about raw meat, and there's almost never a warning label on raw veggies. And it's like, well, if X bacteria is in the ecosystem and we're simply saying cook half of the food you're taking out of the ecosystem and not the other half, it's like, well, if E. coli is on everything,
right,
then why are we only putting warning labels on the meat?
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense.
It is pretty silly. But I mean, and when it comes to vegetables too, in terms of like hierarchy of like decision making and quality, like you'll find regenerative farms too in terms of vegetables. You'll also find biodynamic, which is like a whole other level of like organic. It's essentially just, you know, down to the seed, down to the soil, down to the ingredients used. It's like organic on crack. Like if you want the most pure, look for biodynamic. But yeah, there's a lot of local places that do that. There's also, what is this one? I think it's called Eat Local. If you hop on Google and just look like local meat, local raw milk, local vegetables and fruits and things like that, you can start digging through things and look at these different components of kind of what level of freshness and organic and biodynamic and regenerative that you might want. But those are probably the 3 hot terms I would say to look for is regenerative, biodynamic, organic, local. Look for those things.
Next question.
Let's go.
How do you buy it? Oof. How do you balance science, intuition, and body autonomy when it comes to vaccines? And I would add a caveat to this question.
Loaded.
In your case, how has that changed with Oakley? So I'll read it again. Here's the question. How do you balance science, intuition, and body autonomy when it comes to vaccines?
Yeah. And again, this is just my personal opinion. And I just preface this with like all of our clients because we get this question with clients all the time. I'm not a doctor. I don't diagnose or treat disease. Like if you guys have genuine medical questions, you need to go to your doctor and ask them and form your own opinions. And, you know, be guided and supported through whatever means that you would like to be supported by. So for me, how do I blend all of these things? I mean, my opinion on this topic is formed from a degree in global public health, which is the health of developing countries and populations. We talked about this on the first podcast episode, but I was enamored and amazed by vaccines and the advent of vaccines and what they had done for public health and population health and developed countries. I was mind blown by it. I never learned anything about the ingredients. I never learned anything about like what's actually in them. I never learned about the flip side of potential side effects. It was just like, behold this incredible public health discovery, almost to the same level of antibiotics and the discovery of penicillin and like how unbelievable that was. And like, look where antibiotics has taken us. So like, I think for me, being realistic about like what I was taught, what the education was, and like we talked about this earlier in this podcast, but being able to apply knowledge and information in science and studies and then practical application of like, what am I seeing in my practice blended with like, what are my personal beliefs and my own intuition of where I stand with all of this. And so for me personally, again, I form my opinions around this topic from my education, my degree, secondly, my experience in my practice. That was the second thing that hit. Most importantly, I hadn't really thought about vaccines until I got into holistic health. And then we had kids who were vaccine injured and like MMR vaccine, boom, within 24 hours, encephalitis, brain swelling, diagnosed with autism the day after. Like, I don't know how you define that in any other way than like this vaccine triggered this autistic diagnosis for this kid. Is it reversible? I don't know. Let's look at toxic burden. Let's detox the heavy metals and the adjuvants and the, you know, components in this vaccine that might have tipped the scales for this kid. And toxic burden is something that's really important to understand because we all carry a different bucket of toxins. You can think of it as a bucket. Some of us, it's half full, throw a vaccine on top and it's not a big deal. Maybe you're sick for a day or two and it's nothing. Maybe you are this kid that, you know, this is where people get really confused with children. Is they're like, they're brand new. They're a brand new kid. How do they have cancer? How do they have food allergies? How do they have autism from a vaccine? How do they have, you know, whatever the potential question is. And the reality is we pass down all of our toxins, pathogens, everything in utero to our children, even from the father. The sperm carries stressors, genetic encoding, genetic expression, gene expression of whatever they went through, their traumas, their experiences. We're all predisposed based on, the two components of DNA that make the child, and then things passed in utero. There was a study done years ago that there was up to 200 different types of chemicals and toxins found in cord blood, which is insane. But it makes sense. Like, this is the modern world we live in. And you think about the birthing process, which is a whole other topic we don't have to get into. But the birthing process is so different now. There's medications, there's fentanyl in epidurals, which I got one. I'm not going to hate on that. But it's a reality. You take on risk with everything that you do and the choices that you make when you're pregnant, your nutrient status when you're pregnant. Did you detox before you got pregnant? Thinking about the amount of people that have trouble getting pregnant, without going off on a crazy tangent in that direction, there's so much that plays into the health of your child. So it's really not a mind-blowing thing to me being in this field where we see these kids that are so dang sick because the parents were sick and the grandparents were sick and their parents were sick. So we pass down gene expression, susceptibility to illness, toxic burden, pathogens, all the meds that you took. Did you have an overly medicated birth? Was it a high-risk birth? Was it an IVF baby? Was it, chemically induced? Baby was, petri dish conceived and then put into your body. The ways that we create humans these days is it's pretty wild, and the toxins that we're exposed to. So I think there's a lot of reasons why we're seeing the rise in these things. But anyway, back to my opinions on how do I form this? Had my opinions in college from the education that I had, got into my practice, started working with a lot of vaccine injured kids, and it was what the hell? This is crazy stuff. I heard crazy documentaries that these wild people were, slamming vaccines, anti-vax. I was just never really interested in the topic, to be honest. And then it started hitting, and I was this is weird. We need to look into this. You start looking at ingredients, and there's heavy metals. There's more, I forget the specific stats, and you can look at this online, but if you go to the CDC website, look at the safe amount of heavy metals that a human can have, a baby can have.
You're talking about the GRAS standards that
Not
generally regarded
necessarily-
as safe.
Yes, that's more so related to food. It might be related to vaccines too. I'm not specifically sure on that, but there's toxic amounts of heavy metals that have been identified by the CDC. The amount that is in one vaccine recommended in the first day of life exceeds the micrograms of aluminum by 200 times. And it's okay, if you guys are going to set the standard here, but then say that this schedule is safe, is insane. And you look at the childhood schedule today versus what we had in the 90s or what our parents had, and the combinations of them. Our parents didn't have a combination of MMR. They were all 3 separate ones on 3 separate appointments. It gave the immune system more time. The ingredients were different.
Yeah.
So
and the metal thing is tough because people call it mercury or aluminum, and then even further than that, you need to look at what type, because there are different types of metals that are easily cleared by the body, some of which are in vaccines, and then there are some that are not.
Yeah.
So just because you're calling it X, we call them heavy metals, but that's because we're kind of lazy. I use the word lazy a lot, but we basically don't want to
It's
look
true, though.
into what metal it is and then what form that metal it is, right? When you get your electrolytes, okay, I'm getting sodium, but how
What
are
form
you
of
getting sodium, right?
Sodium chloride.
So there's all different
Sodium in its
types of
natural form.
heavy metals, and then within that, there's different types
Yeah.
of mercury. We've actually changed the mercury type, I believe, in the last 10
It's mostly
years.
stripped. Mercury is not really in, and this is an interesting coming about now is the connection of mercury was linked to autism. Well, they took that out of most vaccines, and
Right.
they have, but it's not really mercury that's actually concerning. It's the aluminum, and it's the form of aluminum, and all of the other components. Most people have never looked at the ingredients of any vaccine, and you can go to a website called Just Ingredients. You can read, there's plenty of books. I have a highlight on Instagram that's called Jabs that has a ton of resources and information that I dug deep into after we started seeing this in our practice. COVID was another thing that was whoa, we really need to think about this. And then like you said, having my daughter, it was what are we gonna do here? How are we gonna look at this? And there's a lot that's shaped my personal opinion around this, and then my own intuition and thoughts. I think that's kind of how you blend it. Gather the information just for to give the quick and short on that. And we can dig deeper into this if you want to, but I definitely
Don't be lazy.
Yeah, you can't. I mean, do not outsource the health of yourself or your children when you're injecting something into your body.
This is back to that personal sovereignty. It's like, why
100%.
why are we not capable of investigating things ourselves? We
Yeah.
have massive data models.
100%.
I have a
Anyone
thing in
can
my
get
pocket
online.
that's better than like 75% of doctors.
Yeah.
Like, what? I can do so much research
Right.
with this supercomputer. The fact that like, it's like, oh, just listen to them. They know. It's
Right.
like,
Well, and I think it's okay to outsource to someone that you trust, but
Sure.
I also think that you should be educated on something as serious as like,
as long as you get to pick that person.
right. Well, and there's also an element of like, look at all of the pharma commercials. They say all the side effects at the end. We all make fun of that because it's somebody like galloping through a flowery field and they're like, you might die and be suicidal and shit your pants forever. And like, all these terrible things that we like to make memes about and laugh about, but at least they're telling you. With vaccines, they aren't. And it's because of a law that passed a long time ago that lifted liability from vaccine manufacturers, that they are not liable by the U.S. government for any side effects. That is
That's
insane.
89 or something. It's the Vaccine Safety Act is what you're referring to.
And I forget. I mean, like, just make vaccine manufacturers liable again. See what happens. It's crazy the amount of people we have worked with that COVID was crazy. If you were in holistic health, I mean, you couldn't say shit. Like the shadow banning, like my account got slammed, even from family members that were like in the mindset of like, trust the experts, take the vaccine. What are you doing? I had family members that were like, you're a murderer. Do you just have to be different than everybody else? Must be nice for you. I can't believe I hang out with someone who's unvaccinated, like effing nuts. And I was like, if you don't want to be around me, you don't have to be around. Don't hang out with me.
Yeah.
I understand how you feel. And I think this is what's like hard in this conversation is like, for me personally, like I genuinely don't care if somebody wants to go get a vaccine, wants to be on medications like metformin for the rest of their lives because they don't want to change their diet if they have diabetes because they love their ice cream so much. Do what you want.
Personal sovereignty.
But at least have informed consent. At least know what you're doing. And I think that's like the big disconnect is like, don't shit on someone who is choosing something different than you when you like genuinely don't understand. And I think that's like, COVID was wild because for me personally, when that all started to unfold, it was like, we've got this new vaccine. It's mRNA. I remember being like, what's mRNA? Does it even fall into a category of a vaccine? Because there's like 5 components of what
it's not
make
a vaccine.
No, it's gene therapy.
It's gene therapy.
It's
and
not a vax.
that is part of the interesting thing. Well, so there's a lot of reasons it had to be. So the Vaccine Safety Act, essentially what happened was there was a lot in the 80s, there was a lot of side effects from there was repercussions, I'll say, from certain vaccines that were considered to be experimental, and we were just giving them to people.
Yeah.
And what happened was,
especially the military, which we still
all
do.
of those people won those lawsuits. And so what happened was the business insurers said, hey, vaccine companies, we're not going to keep paying
you
your
can't do
medical
this
bills.
anymore.
We're good. So now they have no business insurance. And now the companies are like, well, we'll make medicine, but we're not making any more vaccines because we can't afford to. So the government goes, whoa. We need vaccines.
Yeah.
How about this? We'll take a little bit of money out of every taxpayer's dollars. We'll make a big bank. Then that bank will pay for any liabilities that result from vaccines. We want you guys to keep making vaccines. We're the world's leader in vaccines. The world needs this, which I understand. I'm like, okay, at the time, all
These
public
things all
benefiting from vaccines.
seem to come from a good place.
It seems like it was like a good decision at the time.
Yeah.
Then what happens, the repercussion is people start making any vaccine they want and start giving hepatitis C vaccines to babies
that are a day old.
When
they've never been exposed to needles and
never had
drug
sex.
addiction, never had sex. It's supposed to last until they're 16. Like, what are we doing? I mean, that one's
a wild one.
That one's insane.
And for me, this is where the liberal conservative thing is funny, because the Project Warp Speed was actually Trump who wanted to rush the vaccine out in the beginning. We've got a vaccine. We're going to get it out.
But he's out of office, and then, I mean, you wouldn't know how that would have played out.
He's like, we're going to get it out super fast. So what I said, I was living down in my truck at the time in Southern California.
In a cave? Come on.
No, I was not in a cave because I was surfing. The waves were good.
Nice.
And I was down there, and the world had shut down, and I was with my friends. Both are really high-level scientists, really smart.
Yeah.
And they said, oh, when are you going to go and get your vaccine? I was like, oh, I'm not going to get it. I'm going to wait and like see how this thing goes, and I'll get
Right.
it if it makes sense, like after I
Right.
know more about it.
Logical.
Because I don't really know what it is.
Logical decision.
And I'm still great friends with them. She goes, "Oh, you're a toilet scientist."
Like you're just on your phone on the toilet.
No,
Is that what the question is?
I think it means, I took it as like I do science like in a petri dish, like in the toilet, or like I don't even know,
Yeah.
but basically like I'm a shit science, like I can't possibly have an informed decision because I'm not a real scientist.
Okay, and this is what drove me nuts through COVID, and this was always the kickback of like, how do you know better? And it's like, well, I don't, but like you need 2 years of human trials to clear a vaccine. And because of the expedited process, I forget, like the Emergency Act of pushing it into the entire population, we didn't have those human trials. And now, I mean, the Pfizer files, everything that has come out, the shit that we saw in my practice alone was insane.
Yeah, the
And
myocarditis
again,
is crazy.
Nuts. We had myocarditis so many times.
Especially for athletes. That's what
Yes.
we're seeing now, is like
It's
it's in a
nuts.
lot of really fit people, which is
Yes.
terrifying because
It's so scary.
COVID didn't really affect fit people. And now
No.
I'm like, these poor fucking people. And it's not anybody's
Yeah.
fault because I
They
was
did
never
what they thought-
anti-vax.
Everyone just did what they thought was best.
I just said, I want to wait a sec. That's
Same.
all I said. I
Same.
was not like, I'm never getting the vaccine. I had friends like that, right?
Yeah.
Fuck the vaccine.
Well,
You can't
as
tell
soon
me
as
what to
it
do.
became politicized,
Yeah.
then it was like, okay.
And I was still like,
come on.
I might get the vaccine if it turns out this
Yeah,
is like really
curious.
helping.
Curiosity
I'm
around
just
it.
like, I don't have any data.
Right.
I'm just not going to put it in
That's
my arm right now.
exactly how I felt. I was like, okay, I know, like, I only have a BS. I'm not a freaking epidemiologist and brilliant vaccine manufacturer, but I, for myself personally, felt like I know the process of what creating a vaccine should go through. I was like in Bangladesh when they were doing trials on creating a 4th strain flu shot instead of a 3-strain flu shot. Like I'd been around that for a long period of time. Understand the process, understand the 5 components of what makes a vaccine. And my ears were just perked the whole time during COVID because I was like, this doesn't even fall into the category of a vaccine. What is MMR? What does it actually do in the body? Like I wanted to know that for myself and for Stu. You heard whispers of fertility issues, and we were on the cusp of wanting to start a family. We had already had a miscarriage, so that was like high on my list of like, well, I'm not going to jeopardize that.
Yeah.
And then we started seeing all these crazy things in my practice. We had people with like complex health issues that were, at bay, and people in remission and really complex autoimmune conditions that were doing great, that everything spiked up again immediately after the vaccine. My brother-in-law passed out after every shot he got. And they treated it like normal. They're like, yeah, this happens sometimes. Just sit in this chair and let us know when you feel better, and then you can go. I mean, like the weird things that were happening. Athletes falling over. Like there was a time during COVID where you could literally search like suddenly dies. And like if you literally just searched suddenly dies, there was an ungodly amount of headlines all over the world of people just dropping myocarditis. I mean, we were seeing crazy things, and it was hidden so much, which is so sad, but you can see it all now. No one wants to talk about it. And I'm definitely in the camp of like, I think when I was younger and I was in this field, I had this like, I told you so, like I was right, like I needed to be right, chip on the shoulder. But I've been doing this for long enough and have worked with enough people that like, I don't need to be right. We were right. We saw this stuff, like shove it into anyone's face. I mean, it's sad. I wish it wasn't true. The thing that my family member told me of like, do you just have to be different? It would have been really nice through that time period to not be different, to just go with the flow, to just get the vax. Like it was harder to not have it.
Yeah, there was definitely weird family things.
It was crazy. So I think I
wasn't right about anything though. I was just like,
Just
I don't
curious.
know.
Yeah.
My answer was just, I don't know. So I don't
Yeah.
have anything to be like, oh, I told you so about.
Yeah.
My answer was, I don't have, okay, I guess I was right about, I don't have the data.
Yeah.
I
Now
don't-
we do, and it's terrifying.
Yeah. But like, I wasn't that guy beating that drum. And
Yeah.
I can't take claim and be like, I was so right. I told you so. Because
Yeah.
my answer was,
I have no idea.
I'll wait and see.
But I think a lot of people felt that
It's
way.
like out in the woods and people are like getting this disease that I feel like wouldn't really bother me too bad
Yeah.
anyways. It's like, I'm
sure.
good. I'm just going to keep my body how it is. Things have
Yeah.
been working pretty good so far for me.
Yeah. Why mess it up? I mean, the stands that I took through all of COVID, and I still feel now, whatever vaccine we're talking about, is like, again, you should have the freedom and the sovereignty to make your own decisions. You should have that medical freedom, but you should also have informed consent. And that was a big component of COVID, was like these stories of our clients, of family members, of things all across the world
Employers.
that were silenced, forced to get something that you don't have informed consent on, fired from your job that provides for your family. If you have questions, if you want to know what you're injecting into yourself because you don't even know what the ingredients are, like, that's crazy to me. Like, to not have the freedom to choose and to be told, like, if you don't get this, then you're killing people. And, you know, we look back at everything from that time, and it was like, you know, Biden even put out something during Christmas time of like, was that 21, 22? And it was like, and a Christmas full of like death and suffering for the unvaccinated.
That's the most
from
wild.
The president.
That's the most wild White House press thing. And I think
Nuts.
I was living in a cave, I think, at that
Crazy.
point. And I remember somebody sending to me this. I was like, dude, this is
Yeah.
such a good spoof.
It's crazy.
And they're like, no.
It's
this,
real.
This is real.
It was a real freaking
said,
letter.
It said to the vaccinated, like, enjoy your winter, stay cozy, focus on community, and love each other. To the unvaccinated, prepare for a winter of death.
Yeah.
And it's literally this paragraph, and you're like, oh my God,
Yeah.
it's real.
But this is like the divisiveness that's like woven into all this. And you see it now. I mean, it's nuts. To me, it's like, if you got vaccinated and it does what you think that it does, you shouldn't be afraid of somebody else who didn't get it. Right?
No, well,
if you can
because
think
it never
logically,
it didn't limit transmission.
Right, but back
They-
when
they
this
wa-
was all going
That,
on, it
they
was
held
like,
on to
get
that for like a
vaccinated.
week, and then they were like, nope, it doesn't. It doesn't help with
Right.
transmission.
But then it was
you'll
like,
get less
if you get
sick.
one, right,
Oh, wait.
get another one and then you'll get less sick, and get another one and then you'll get less sick. And then it was like, what does this thing even do? Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, it was wild.
Crazy times.
And
But yeah,
vaccines made so many. Yeah, it was an interesting time because it made so many people act differently, and it's another one of those things where it's like it leans on people to be lazy and choose one side or the other instead of saying, I don't know, let me have like my personal freedom and try and figure out what the best answer is.
for sure. Well, and the reality is, like, in a good, clean society, we should be able to do that. We should be able to rely on, I mean, I think about like my mom and my grandparents of like, family doctor, you trust the family doctor, you're going to do what the family doctor says. Things are so different now where it's like, your doctor was educated, you know, had less nutrition than, like, I forget the amount. It's like you have one class in nutrition as a doctor. You have a bajillion classes in pharmaceuticals and vaccines and specific disease pathology. And like, I think there is a time and place, 1000% for medicine, but there is also a huge gap. And the reality is a lot of these doctors are woven into this system where they're educated on these certain things. They're taught to diagnose and then treat with medications or surgery. They only have so many options. It's really not their fault to some extent. But the other component is like, there's really no recourse if people don't fall into a disease category. You kick them out and then they go, you're just as a doctor, you're waiting for them to fall into a disease category to be able to treat them because you need a diagnosis. And if you don't have a diagnosis, then what do you have? And you haven't been educated on food and supplements and lifestyle and some of these other things. Some of those things are starting to come into the medical field a little bit. And it depends on who your doctor is. There's some really incredible doctors, but there's also just, you know, there's just such a gap, and the system is just, it's different now.
I will push back on that
It's
a little bit.
restrictive to some extent.
Some folks think that everything is bad now, and I push back on this
Yeah, but
a little
some things
bit
were really effed up before.
because a lot of it is just accounting. So,
Yeah.
for example, like toxins, right?
Yeah.
People think, oh my God, there's more toxins now than ever. Bullshit. It's total bullshit.
Yeah, it's
There's
more
more
regulated
accounting for
now.
toxins.
Yeah.
Everyone knows about it in the media. The toxic soup that your parents slept in,
Dude,
worked in, it
The
was
DDT
fucking,
sprayed on our grandparents.
it was another level. Their houses
was
were
crazy.
built out of asbestos. It
Yeah.
is crazy
Lead
to
paint.
think about.
Kids are eating lead
You
paint.
think about like kidnappings and serial killers, like, oh my God, the streets are so dangerous. Nope, they're safer.
Yeah.
Everyone knows about every bad thing that happened.
Yeah,
They
we're
didn't
more
used to
aware.
get talked about as much, but they're safer
sure.
now. There's more cameras
There's
everywhere.
definitely-
There's more awareness. And so I push back on that a little bit because there's this
Yeah.
constant, I can't remember what that complex is called. Naval talks about it, but like basically people, it's fun to feel like it's the end of the world.
100%.
Like the world is
Well,
ending.
it's how we're hardwired, like neurologically.
Every
is to
election, the
look
world is
for-
over.
Yeah.
This is the last
We're always
election.
looking for like the most dangerous thing to stay away from.
And I heard everyone on the right saying that if Biden won this would be the last election, or if Kamala won this would be
Yeah.
the last election. I'm like, why are we so obsessed with
Or like 2000. I remember when it became 2000, it was like the end of the world. Like, still here.
still here?
25 years later.
And then 2012 was also the end.
Yeah.
The Mayan calendar end.
Yeah.
We're obsessed with right now is the most tumultuous and the hardest.
Yeah.
And it's like, nah.
Well, it's also even like biblically in Revelation, it's like literally states like, you will not know the day and time that I'm coming. Like,
Fire.
you're not going to know
Great.
the day and time that the world is going to end.
Oh, great. I didn't know that, but now I do.
Yeah.
That's
No,
great.
God's literally like, you're not going to know.
You're not going to know.
So for me, I'm always like, anytime there's like a clear, like, this is the time. It's like, well,
not
God
it.
said we're not going to know. So
All right. I'm interested to hear about some other things that I want to know if you have the opinion, because I feel like a lot of health stuff is now all or nothing.
yes.
And
oh
I'm
my God.
curious if
It's
any of
exhausting.
these have their place, or are they all bad? Number one, alcohol. Does it have a place, or is it 100% bad?
Ooh. If you're talking just straight up science, all bad.
All bad.
All of the studies on science, it's creates more gray matter in the brain. It disconnects neurological connections. It's inflammatory. It's a toxin. It stresses the liver. I mean, you see the impacts of chronic drinking. It's obvious what alcohol does. It's extremely toxic. But I also feel like there's a balance with life in general. Like, is alcohol worse than sugar? Is alcohol worse than you had a traumatic experience, and how did that impact your genes and expression? Like, I just try to look at everything from a balanced view. I'm definitely not the type of person or practitioner to sit here and be like, no one should drink and I don't drink because it's a toxin and like, hair flip. But I think what's important, just like the theme of everything that we're talking about, is like informed consent. What decisions are you making? How is that impacting your body? Is that worth it for you? Is it worth it for you to like let loose once a month and go have 4 or 5 drinks with some friends out at a bonfire because that's a blast and it's summertime? Go for it. Like, are you going to get Alzheimer's because of that? I don't know. Do you have the genes for that? Do you have the APO gene that's going to like trigger those things? Maybe you shouldn't drink. Do you have crazy anxiety after drinking? And take that into consideration. Is your gut going to be destroyed? Like, I think there's so many bio-individual components, but if we want to again look at like, what does the science say about drinking? It's freaking horrible for you.
Mm-hmm.
It's terrible for you.
Yeah, I would agree in almost every respect to the modern community. I would push back in the fact that alcohol saved the world. It saved the human population.
Wait, tell me more about that. What is this?
Well, my gene line may have died without alcohol, specifically because of the Guinness factory. So in the old days, the way they
In terms of working or like calories and consumption?
Yeah, I'll break it down for you. So in the old days, the way it would work is you would buy things from the company store. So a corporation would have employees, and the employees needed to get rice and water and
Right.
whatever. So you would buy that also from your company. They would have a company store.
Interesting.
And that way you would have them indebted forever. So that employee could never leave your factory, so that you'd be, indebted forever. And there's an old Irish story about the Guinness factory in which he just started sending poor people home with Guinness, which was extremely calorically dense.
Yep.
And also, about fermentation. In the old days, people gave their kids, alcoholic beverages. They were very low levels of alcohol.
Right.
But it was safer than drinking water. So you weren't getting dysentery, you weren't getting bowel
right.
diseases, things like that. So
I forgot about that.
there is a case that, and that's part of the reason that alcohol exists in basically every culture for as long as time has existed.
Interesting.
So I think moving forward to today,
Yeah. It's just used so
my
differently
stance
today.
is like, it's not healthy in any way.
Yeah.
But I will still have a drink like, I don't
Same.
know, I'll go like a year without drinking, and then I'll go on a weekend and I'll be like, oh, this is going to be
This
great.
is the weekend that I'm going to have some drinks with my friends.
Yes, exactly.
Same.
And I'll be like, this is the best.
100%.
And I believe I think it can be heart opening. I think it can be easier
true.
to break down walls, right?
100%.
Social lubricant is like the large frame way, I guess we talk about it.
Yeah.
But like, I think it makes you more vulnerable
For sure.
is really what it is.
Yeah.
It allows you to let other people see you as weak or as extremely happy or
Yeah.
more authentic in that moment. Now I think there's a
Yeah.
tipping point. I think if you have a lot of drinks, you pretty much
There's
are
a
just going to
tipping
act like
point.
an asshole.
100%.
But
Well, and it also depends. I mean, my dad was an alcoholic, which
both my parents were too. So if that is any help to the conversation.
yeah, and I think it's like so. It just totally depends. Like, if my dad was drinking good, no, he's out. He's been sober for 8 years now.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he's like
Shout out to Chuck.
he's a man. He's such a good dude.
Great dude.
But he was like very highly functioning. And I didn't really like know that he was until I was older, and I was like, this is weird. My friends' parents don't drink. Like, my parents partied hard. Like, I partied the hardest with my parents in college than I ever did with like any parties that I went to in college.
Wow.
But you're so right. I mean, like, my dad definitely, like, I have so many amazing memories of like sitting out on the porch and watching storms roll in and him asking me about life and me asking him about like times in the military and like connecting the dots of life backwards. It doesn't make sense moving forward. Like, I have so many beautiful memories, and like my dad's drinking the whole time during those. Like, would we have had those if he wasn't? I don't know.
Hard to say.
It's hard to say. Totally hard to say. But I agree with you. Drinking's like so personal, and there's so many different I mean, everything in health is. Everything we're talking about is like bio-individual. What's your toxic burden? What's your genetic expression? What are your beliefs? What do you think about how the science plays into this? Like, I think this is how you and I in our worldview think about things and go about decision making. Like, we're very intentional. I don't think most people are really that intentional. It's why they're happy to outsource. It's why they're happy to, you know, be like, I'm going to trust the expert on this. What does the science say? Okay, I'm going to do that. Like, take the emotion out of it or take the whatever out of it. And we're all predisposed to have different ways of decision making based on how we were raised or what we experienced. Like, there's so much variability. But I think it's why, like, put all the info out there. People want to consume it, thoughtfully make a decision, go for it. But I think people should have the freedom to decide.
Freedom to decide.
100%.
And don't do things that are bad for you chronically. Do they have their place or not? Here's my next one. Deodorant.
I like, you know what's funny is like I have some like practical thoughts about this, and then it just makes me laugh because I just know you so well.
Damn
like,
it.
F deodorant. There's no place for deodorant. The pheromones are important. You got to attract your mate. Like, I feel like I can hear the things that are probably you're thinking about this.
Maybe. We'll see.
1000%.
We'll see.
Guaranteed. But I agree with that. Like, I mean, I don't know. If you're pretty toxed up, your toxic bucket is full, you're going to smell pretty bad because sweat is a way that the body clears toxins through the skin. So smell of sweat is one thing. Most people wear deodorant because they don't want to stink. They don't want to smell bad. The other component of wearing deodorant is like people don't want wet, you know, they don't want to have like wet armpits. They don't want to sweat. What actually stops, you know, the ingredient that's in deodorant that makes you not sweat is aluminum, which is another heavy metal. And you're putting it right next to a huge amount of lymph nodes in the body. And the skin is extremely absorbable. So people thinking like, oh, there's just a little bit of aluminum, not a big deal. You know, I think like first and foremost, if you're going to wear deodorant because you're choosing to, at least do something that doesn't have aluminum in it. You're not going to get the no sweating component, but you're going to be able to mask the stink component if you're concerned about that.
What's that one you put me on? Primally Pure.
Primally Pure. I really love that one. They have like
melts,
sensitive
just
ones.
so you know.
It does melt because it's tallow based.
Yeah, I found that out because I lived in my truck and
in your car.
I was like, oh, she said to get this.
Scooping it out after you leave it outside for a while.
Yeah, it just turned into
Let it
literal
harden.
like wet clay. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, good.
Yep. Lucky for you. And then
Yeah.
you didn't even have to wear any. Like, you probably didn't want to anyway.
I didn't want to anyways.
Yeah. See, spot on. But
No, it is weird though because there are social situations where I'll put Nicole's on. I'm just thinking about like after I don't know, like if we're on a High Rocks trip or something, she likes her deodorant, and I'm not saying I know for sure that deodorant's bad. Yeah. I'm saying I think we're going to find out in the future that stopping your body from sweating is a grave mistake.
Why would you? I mean, there's also things like you can get lasered. You can like take laser out your sweat glands in your armpits.
That seems like a horrible fucking idea.
I mean, anything that goes against the grain of like God's beautiful design and like how we naturally function, why would you suppress? I think suppression
Say that, and I'll also say for
terrible.
athletes, I think it's making you a 0.5% worse because basically the way it works is there's like central governor theory, which basically says there's all these inputs coming from your body. Your brain makes the decision if you want to stop going so hard.
Yeah.
One of those decisions is drastically related, the main one, to core body temp.
Yeah.
And you're just stopping your body from its ability to
Regulating
sweat.
that.
Huberman talks about it as the ability to sweat. It should be thought of as like an ability this way. Like I can jump high. That's an ability. I can wet myself during workouts is an
and cool
ability,
down.
right?
Well, and some people, like we have clients that are so toxed up in their lymphatic system and their skin is so backed up with toxins that they have a very hard time sweating. And there's probably people listening to this podcast that are like, I'll go do a workout and I don't sweat, but my husband is like dripping sweat doing the same workout as me. Like, what is that? You need to support your drainage and detox pathways, because if you're not sweating easily, it's an issue. And it's
I'm
exactly
sweating right now.
what you're talking about. I'm sweating just talking about sweating.
Sweating, talking about sweating. But no, I will. I'm trying to think of what it was, but I grabbed Nicole's and like it'll be like, oh, like I'm going out with somebody I don't know and I smell really bad right
There's
now,
an element of, yeah,
and I'm
I
like,
get that.
you know, I'm not like stoked to smell bad.
Yeah.
I'm just like trying to weigh the pros and cons.
Right.
And I think it's fine maybe to put it on. I think it's probably not good to put it on every day. And I think that's where I'm
Most
landing.
people, it's part of their like hygiene. I think there's also a component of like, and you are into this stuff too and like knowledgeable about these things, but finding someone to like, I'm going to say mate with, which is like extremely primal, but it's the truth. Like people like to think that we are this like clean, cleanly species, and we're not. We're animals. We are mammals. Like we still have the same biological functions. We got a lot of things interfering with that, like birth control will interfere with the way that you perceive the smell of the person that you're dating. There's a ton of anecdotal.
A wild one.
That is fascinating. There's so many studies and anecdotal studies of like women going off of birth control and being like, I am not attracted to the guy that I'm with anymore, because your like receptors for pheromones is completely off. And I think that is like, that's nuts. But there's an importance to smell. Like I love the way Stu smells after a sweaty, disgusting run. I have since college when we started dating. It feels like home to me. It's like the weirdest thing, but there's an element neurologically that if you like the grimy, sweaty skin smell of your partner, you're a good genetic match and you'll have healthy children and healthy offspring. So there's a biologically primal hardwired component to that too, that I think, how much are we masking our true smell? And like you date somebody long enough, you're going to see what they smell like,
We pretty much don't use
thing.
smell at all. Like even living in a city, there's like, I mean,
It's all masked with fragrance, which is also a hormone disruptor.
You pretty much just have
Crazy.
You have no lower bound for smell. So it's like there's just constantly all this shit, all these chemicals, everything going on. You have no real ability to smell. And when you go to, call it the wilderness or wherever, I think that you regain a lot of that ability because you start depending on it. When you're hunting, you're depending on your smell.
Your senses are incredibly important.
When you're out in the bush, you're depending on your smell. Like in your daily life, what's important? It's like feeling and seeing, right? Those are like what we use. We don't really use smell that often anymore. Most people, maybe chefs, but just about anybody else. Last question that I have on here is what is a wellness belief that you have changed your mind on recently?
Ooh, okay. You sent this to me earlier and I was like, oh my God, I don't know the answer to that question. I feel like I'm always changing my mind on things. Gosh. I think one of them, I don't know. I'm not like, how do I say this? What do I want to say? When I first got into the field, I was like a food Nazi. I was nuts. I was like, we got to grow our own food and get our own animals, and we're only going to be healthy if we're like, I was just crazy about everything. Because like you learn all this stuff, you realize the truth, and it's overwhelming and stressful and shocking and terrifying. But then you got to rebalance it out, in my opinion, with like the reality that you're in the modern world, the reality that the food system is different, reality that like maybe you don't have access to whatever, and you've got to like figure out what's going to work for you, work for your budget, work for your family. There's a lot of components. Things are not as straightforward as they used to be. So in that regard, I have one thing on Instagram that I share a decent amount is like a grocery haul. And I always get feedback from people that are like, there's seed oils in that, and like people just shitting on certain things that I like to indulge in. Like, certain chips or ice cream, or, you know, there's a better ice cream. And like, I mean, part of me is like, F you, let me live. I'm like 90-10 on the way that I approach my life with nutrition. Like, I know too much. I'm very tight on things. Then I'm also like, I've got my health in order. I have detoxed to the nines after being incredibly sick. I like tolerate things. My toxic burden is lower. I can tolerate more things. I know my body extremely well, and I feel good about where I'm at. And like, I value bioindividuality over pretty much anything with our clients, with myself, with anyone. It's like everything we've been talking about this whole time. And with that in mind, like, there's rarely things that I hold on so tightly to. There's so many people in my field that do that, where they're like, this is the way, and then it flips and they're like, oh my God, and they're shattered. One thing that is coming out now, though, that I think is interesting is like this war on seed oils. There's definitely like this mindset of like, all seed oils are bad, all seed oils are terrible, and like, that's literally just not true. Synthetic and processed seed oils are terrible, but like, you need linoleic acid for every single cellular membrane in your body. You won't have healthy cells with high quality linoleic acid. There's a product from Body Bio that has like a perfect ratio blend of omega-3s to omega-6s, and all the omega-6s come from seeds, and they're cold pressed, fresh, in a dark bottle, should be refrigerated after opening, seed oils in a bioavailable form with linoleic acid that every single cell in your body needs. So I think people need to get off of this like mainstream bandwagon of like, this is bad, this is good. Like, again, learn more about it. Why are seed oils bad? Like, go on YouTube and watch a video of how canola oil is made, and you will never eat it ever again in your life.
Heated to 450 degrees, made rancid, turned black, dyed to
Bleached.
yellow.
It's crazy.
It's wild.
But it's heart healthy, right?
It's
Heart
wild.
healthy. It's so terrible. Oh, the research on that is nuts. And the graphs of when people started having crazy metabolic issues and heart disease after canola oil was introduced to the diet is nuts.
And if you look at like how much you would get from rapeseed, which is canola oil, or corn oil,
Yeah.
and you look at how much
It's crazy.
it would take to get this much oil, it's like rooms full.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why they process it that way.
Well, and all the subsidies, and I mean, yeah, that's like a whole other rabbit hole. But I think, I mean, I didn't hold on to seed oils so tightly. It was something that I avoided, and like, you dig deeper and you learn more things, and you're like, not all seed oils are bad.
It has a place.
It has a place. Canola oil does not have a place.
No.
Like, processed
Bullshit.
never has a place. I mean, are you going to indulge in those things from time to time? Sure, we're human. Like, I'm going to go out to eat, and I'm going to eat in a restaurant that has canola oil. Maybe I'm going to be mindful about the things that I get. I'm not going to eat like Brussels sprouts soaked in it coming out of the fryer. But, you know, I'm going to eat the chicken and the whatever
fajitas.
and just be mindful. Be a little bit more mindful. Be more educated. Make more intentional decisions about things. But that's probably one that I would say, at least in the field, largely speaking. Actually, I just shared this on my stories. One thing that I did change my mind on was Oakley's birth. I was like anti-hospital, F the hospital, like consumed all of this holistic information about birth. And then after 20 plus hours of labor and Oakley being OP, which is occipital posterior, sunny side up, we were spine to spine. Baby's supposed to come out, you know, with their tummy to your spine. So I had crazy back labor. Every contraction, I was having double peaked contractions. So instead of 1 minute, it would peak up to 1, go to drop off, and then I'd go another minute. So I was having like 2-minute contractions. And during the contractions, it literally felt like somebody had like a flamethrower on my back. Like, I couldn't be touched. I've never screamed louder in my life. It was like the most insane thing. And my doula was like, you need to lay on your side on a peanut ball. I think she's flipped. Like, this is the only way she's going to flip. I went through like 2 or 3 contractions like that. And I was like, I'm like actually going to die. This is like so terrible. Not to scare anyone about labor who's listening to this, but like, it's intense. Labor is very intense. She was flipped. I hadn't eaten in like 24 hours. I've been up for 24 hours. I couldn't eat anything because I was in so much pain. I was nauseous. And I was like, give me the effing epidural. And like, we went to the hospital, got an epidural, fully blocked. Sometimes women only get like 1 leg, or it doesn't work, or whatever. But it worked for me. Had a great experience. They gave us the freedom to make whatever decisions we wanted to make. Like, we had an awesome experience.
And a great doctor.
Pregnant again, and we're going straight to the hospital this time, because I'm like, we're just going to do, I don't know if I'm going to get an epidural again. If my baby's not OP this time, I'm like, I want to see what this is like. I want to see how different it is.
Oh.
But that is one thing that I was
martyr.
like, you know, see what happens. We'll see what happens. But that is outside of the seed oil thing. Maybe that's like more broad spectrum, but for me personally,
Cool.
something I like drastically changed my mind on. I was like, Not all hospitals are bad.
It's an important, not all hospitals are bad. Not all doctors are bad. Love the doctors. Some of my best friends are doctors.
Yes, time and place.
People that want to find out more about what you do, where can they find you?
They can find me on Instagram. We're rebranding and changing our website and the name of our company and everything right now. So I'm going to hold back on the website. But Instagram, it's what Cait ate. Cait is Cait, because I was called Caitlin for my whole life until I started my business. And now everybody calls me Cait.
And it's 8, like what you ingested.
Yes. What
A-T.
Caitate. What I ate. Because this all started with a food blog in college. And it's gone to a bigger company and helping thousands of people every year. Our team is awesome. But yeah, we're actively taking one-on-one clients. We work with all sorts of different complex, chronic, systemic, inflammatory illnesses. We help people with digestive issues. We help people get pregnant. We've helped hundreds of families get pregnant that were deemed infertile or ambiguous fertility diagnosis. We run complex functional labs. We look at environmental toxicity. We look at comprehensive hormone panels. We look at stool panels. We do a little bit of everything. We kind of catch everyone that falls between the cracks in the conventional system.
Cool. Well, thanks for coming out. And till next time, stay wild.
Thanks for having me.